to know what you are in order to become what you are. You have to know what you are in order to become what you are. Who are we? Why are we here? What is our purpose? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning was the Word. The Word became flesh. The Word, God, became man. We have no existence apart from each other. We do not exist apart from each other. He mentioned a moment ago one aspect of that. Happiness is found in community. It's deeper than that. We don't exist outside. We are made in the image and likeness of God. 3 persons, 1 God. We don't exist alone. Billions of persons, 1 will. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done. 1 will. Billions of persons. Before us, with us, after us. Time has no meaning. We are all together. Father Dennis and all those who passed before us are with us. Those of us that are in this room are with us. Those of us that will come who have not yet been born. My being, while it is still unformed, my eyes they see. In another book shall all men be written. Day by day they are formed, when as yet there be none of them. So we exist only with each other. And this, and I took this from the altar, Father, I apologize. But this is our model. 3 persons, 1 God, in a loving relationship with each other. One of those 3, the Word, became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten Son, full of grace and truth. The law was given by Moses, my God, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. So, what is our identity? When you get to the core of it, we have to understand, and it comes from our faith, which is unique. Monotheism, there are 3 great faiths: the Jewish, Islam, God. But we have come closer to know that one God. We have come to know him as a Father, not a cold, aloof creator who watches us suffer and die and has no compassion. No, it's our Father. Just those 2 words. Just, it's a lifetime you can think about those 2 words. Why not my Father? Why don't we say my Father? Why do we say our? Because we don't exist apart from each other. Our Father, if we have the same Father, what does that make us? Brothers, sisters. We understand that God is a personal God, a Father who cares, who has compassion. So, those 2 words, our, that we are all his children, not my Father, and Father. It is a relationship with a living being. Okay, now we get to what we are. What is our identity? We don't exist. We don't even exist apart from each other. And so when we begin to understand that, when we begin to use this wonderful icon, I think we have so many wonderful icons, but this may be the greatest Logos icon of the Holy Trinity, of the three of them together, with their heads bowed. There's no arrogance. Find some arrogance, find some pride in that icon. You won't. It's nothing but love. It is a circle of love. And at one point in the history that Peter gave us, it became necessary to break that circle to a certain extent, and for one of those to come here and become a man. Why? To show us how we must fulfill our identity in the image and likeness of God, and given two great gifts. And yet, those gifts are what cause us to struggle. Free will, the greatest gift of all. God, man, requires much of us. All kinds of laws which historically, since from the time we began to learn how to write or even speak, we created rules for each other. Many, many, many rules. Many, many, many requirements. Man, lawyers, law, have many rules, many requirements. God has none. Not one requirement. You choose. You are free. You have the freedom to choose. Now, if you choose me, and if you choose life, well, now there are all kinds of requirements that you have chosen to take on. We can maybe get to that a little bit in terms of our identity, because you first have to know who you are in order to become what you are. We're getting to that, I think. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We exist together. But this is such a complicated thing. What do you mean, three persons in one God? What do you mean, billions of persons in one will? That becomes the task of our becoming what we are. Becoming fully human. Fully human. That's a day-to-day task, an hour-to-hour task, a minute-by-minute task to become fully human. Well, what's the best way to learn? By example? Well, then give us an example. Please, God, give us an example of what it means to be fully and truly human. One of them became one of us and taught us what it means to become fully human. You have to die. You have to. He, although he was God, thought it not to be robbery to empty himself and take on the form of a servant and become obedient. Obedient even unto death. Obedient even unto death on the cross. Such love. There it is. There's the example that we need. There's the example that we're to follow in order to become what we are. How to become what we are. We are human. How to become fully human. Our real identity, the source and origin of our identity. It's not an abstract collection of molecules or solids or all these kinds of things that have happened over the last billions of years. We were created for a purpose. And we must, to fulfill that purpose, become fully human. And we've been given so many gifts, and we will be held responsible for those gifts. one gift that I want to talk about comes very much in my line of work. The Word, laws. But that's just another manifestation of the Word. And we understand that the Word is a person. I am the truth. I am love. God, in the beginning, was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word became flesh. And so, we've been given with free will that gift. And the Word, the ability to speak, the ability that the Word, when you understand it, becomes sacred. And now, as we try to fulfill ourselves, and we see the dangers of every minute of every hour of every day, it's that danger of free will, choosing, and the Word, and whether we treat it as a sacred thing or whether we trivialize it as something that is menial, and perhaps far worse. And now, Peter was talking about this evolution of technology. It's very frightening. In one respect, Father mentions this repeatedly, and you can't mention it often enough. We are going to be held responsible since we have this gift of godly gift of the word, of speech, of writing. We will be held accountable for every idle word. Every idle word. Now start thinking about how we use the social media. Just give it a couple of seconds to think about our use of that. Because before we had this, Peter's talking about what's happened in the last 200 years. Let's just think about what's happened in the last 20 years. If I were gossiping and I was sitting at a local tavern where the ladies were sitting at the local coffee shop gossiping, all right, you've probably heard yourself. You've probably heard 5 or 6 other people who just heard what you said. But it's relatively confined, that damage that you've done by not respecting the sacredness of the word. But now, what does it take for us to take that word, that silly word, that trivial word, that nonsense word, that harmful word, and spread it throughout the world? Nada can do that right now. She can put something on her, whatever, Facebook, is that what it is? And 1 billion people will get that rumor. 1 billion people will get that hurt. 1 billion people. So we have now magnified our ability to corrupt the sacred gift, the most sacred gift that we've been given, the Word itself, the Word that became man, the Word that gave him his life for us, and now we trivialize it. So I think that if there are 2 things that I would want to, maybe points that I would want to make to carry away with. Number 1, we don't exist apart from each other. We don't even exist apart from each other. And so we then have to identify what we need to do in order to become what we are. To become not only human, but fully human. And we've been given these wonderful gifts. The liturgy, the Holy Fathers, all of these lessons, but most of all, we've been given the example of God himself. And we look at that, and we take the Fathers, and we take everything that's been written in the Scriptures and the tradition, and we struggle with it every day. But one of the greatest gifts, together with our choice, the sun can't choose to come up from the west. It follows God's law. A tree can't choose to move. An animal even can't choose, but we can choose. The most important part of our existence is totally within our control. Our choice. Every choice that we make, every hour of each day. And the gift that we've been given to amplify that choice is the Word. And so we have to look at how, first to respect it, and to see the Word. Once we see that we are so connected with each other, that we don't even exist apart from each other, to then use that gift within us, the Word, to see that we don't harm each other, that we benefit each other. And that's a lifelong pursuit, to become what we are, fully human, so that when we have an encounter with eternity, what do you mean encounter with eternity? Oh, I'm in the elevator going to the fourth floor, somebody else came in the elevator. That's an encounter with eternity. It's another human being that's now come into your life. And maybe you reach out with a kind word. That's all. You know, nice shoes, nice coat. What about this? How about those cookies? Whatever the kind word is, you reach out. That's our true identity. And it's an identity that we are born with, but it's an identity in becoming that's our duty and obligation. They're nurtured. So it's both God-given and nurtured. So those, I think, are the 2 points that I think would be worth making in terms of our identity. We don't exist apart from each other, no more than the Holy Trinity exists. If God were one person, we'd learn to love ourselves. But God is 3 persons, and so we learn to love each other. That model. And secondly, the Word. Whenever we're speaking, whenever we're writing, whenever we're sending or hitting that button, remember that what you're doing is using a sacred gift. And in doing that, make yourself fully human. Develop the identity that you've been given to that level, following the example of the Word that became God, of the Word that became flesh. God became man. So, I guess those are the only 2 points that I try to make, and if I can get 1 or 2 points across, I hope that I've done something. So, thank you all. I always try to make them very...
Never mind, I could get it.